NetsBoy, so let's hear what he has to say. His name is NetsBoy, he thinks the world is all over when the Nets just can't play. What up, Net fans? NetsBoy here, bring your latest your Brooklyn Nets news. So here we are, my top 5 centers based off of last season. Now, before we dive into anything, I want everybody to know that this was probably the hardest of all my top 5s to do. The small forwards was the roughest because I was really digging deep to try to grab some players. This one, it's more about trying to separate really 4 through 2. I was able to get 1-5 pretty easily, and my honorable mention kind of easily, but 4 through 2 was very hard for me to try to objectively, and honestly a little subjectively too, because, you know, that's pick those players. But I did it, and I got a top 5. So that's what this episode is, my top 5 centers based off of last season. So Dwight Howard is not on my list. He only played 49 games last year, which is not enough to qualify, so he's not here. But that's okay, because honestly, I probably wouldn't have put him higher than an honorable mention anyway, because he's a piece of crap. If you remember my great song, D12 is overrated. Well, if you don't remember, just go back in the NetsBoy archives and find my song about how overrated Dwight Howard is. Beside the point, he's not on the list because he didn't play enough games to qualify, and that's okay. I'm glad. So there's no Dwight Howard. So that's right off the bat, you know this is going to be an interesting countdown or interesting list. So let's start. Like I said, this was a pretty tough one to do. I'll start off my honorable mention, Greg Monroe. Now, I'm not even sure if Greg Monroe is really considered a center. You know, he kind of played power forward / center with with Andre Drummond, and now obviously he's going to be the center in Milwaukee, but they have him listed on NBA.com as a center, so I put him there, and to me, he is more of a center than a power forward, so to me, he's a center. 15.9 points per game, 10.2 rebounds, only 0.5 blocks per game, and you're going to hear me talk about this a lot. You want defense and rebounding from your bigs, definitely defense, so that's not that great. Player efficiency rating, 21.26, that's very good. Shot 49% from the field. I mean, those are good numbers. But he's my honorable mention because not enough blocks per game and 15.9 points per game, believe it or not, is the lowest out of everyone who I'm going to be talking about. But hey, 15 and 10, I think a lot of teams would go with a big man who can give you 15 and 10 on a regular basis. That's for sure. So, I think the Bucks are going to do really well with him. I think he's going to be a huge piece to that team. I think the Bucks are going to be a dangerous team this year. So I think that, I don't think anything. This Greg Monroe, honorable mention. My number 5 center in the league is Al Jefferson. 16.6 points per game, 8.4 rebounds, 1.3 blocks, player efficiency rating of 19.75, field goal percentage of 48%. Once again, you can't really be upset. 16 and 8 is very, very, very good. And, Al Jefferson is probably him, how am I going to word this? He's just one of the better offensive big men in the game, one of the better low post players in the game, and he's a very good, skilled big man. And, we'll see if the Hornets can turn things around. But I don't really care too much. But he's my number 5 ranked center because he's a steady 16 and 8 guy, kind of the leader of the Hornets. So that him and Kemba Walker, and he's just a really solid big. Now, my number 4 through 2, like I said, is very, very tough. I was really trying to figure it out, honestly, and I just went with it, and I'll explain why I'm going with each respective player at this position. Number 4, Nikola Vucevic. Is that how I say his name? I have no idea. Nikola Vucevic. I think that's how it's pronounced. On the Orlando Magic. Really, this guy went completely under the radar last year, but he averaged 19.3 points per game, which was second highest among centers, 10.9 rebounds. So he was almost a 20 and 10 guy. Only zero point 0.7 blocks, which is part of the reason why I have him at 4. Player efficiency rating of 21.62. Shot 52% field goal percentage. I mean, that's really good. And the fact that I don't want to say he went under the radar, but honestly, I knew he was having a decent year for the Magic. I didn't know he was basically averaging 20 and 10. Um, but he's a really good young big, and the sky's going to be the limit for him. I think that the Magic have something really good with him. He's not the best defensive player, and I think that's the knock on him. Only zero point 0.7 blocks per game, and I remember hearing, the analytics on him saying he's a really weak defensive player for a big, which, like I said, you want a little bit more defense out of your bigs, at least blocking shots, protect the rim. Um, but, you can't really argue, though, the fact that the guy is a, 20 and 10 guy, basically, So, you got to look at that way. Yeah, Nikola Vucevic, or whatever his name is. I don't know. I'm gonna say Vucevic or Vucevic or I. But he's number 4. Number 3, and once again, this is very tough, and people might be a little shocked, but I have Marc Gasol. Now, a lot of people argue Marc Gasol is the best center in the game, and that he had potential to be an MVP, but here's the reasoning. 17.4 points per game, 7.8 rebounds, 1.6 blocks per game, player efficiency rating 21.73, 3.8 assists, field goal percentage of 49%. I don't understand how those were MVP numbers. I know he tailed off the at the end of the season, but if you remember, the first half of the season, people were like, Marc Gasol, MVP. People were saying things like that because the guy was averaging like 22 and like 9 at the time, but kind of tapered down a bit. But those are just good numbers. Now we know Marc Gasol is a very good defensive player. He won Defensive Player of the Year, I think, last year or 2 years ago. 1.6 blocks, efficiency rating good, 17 and 7 guy, very good numbers. Kind of the leader and go-to guy of the Grizzlies, grit and grind. I like Marc Gasol. I think he's really good. I have him ahead of Vucevic because he's better defensively, had a slightly higher efficiency rating, but really it's the defense. 19 and 10 is great, but if you're not blocking shots and you're not being a defensive presence, to me, you're not doing the job of a center. Kind of like if you're a point guard scoring the basketball, but you're not passing, or you don't have a lot of assists, you're not really doing the justice of the point guard position, who is your primarily ball handler. Scoring is great, but if you cannot pass the ball as a point guard, you're not as efficient. And same thing as the center. Scoring is great, but if you're not blocking shots and playing good defense, it's not as good. And the rebounding, you can make a case. This is why you could definitely make a case to have Vucevic even higher. But because of the fact that Gasol plays tough defense, he played for a winning team, so he's a much more valuable player. He's just a grit and grind guy, and I think he's really good. I went with Gasol at 3 and Vucevic at 4. That's really the reason. Big reason, just defense. Which brings me now to my number 2 ranked center. Now, I will explain why he's number 2. He was number 2 in my countdown last year. He's number 1 in my heart. Good old Brook Lopez. Now, wait a minute, NetsBoy. Come on, stop. Reverse, false start, flag on the play, traveling, whatever you want to call, balk, whatever. How is Brook Lopez the second best center in the league? How can you justify that? I will explain. First of all, I'm somewhat biased. Duh. Lopez jersey. That's the first reason why I have him as the second best center in the game. So just want to get that out of the way. I'm not going to deny that I'm somewhat biased in this decision. Beyond that, 17.2 points per game, 7.4 rebounds, 1.8 blocks per game, player efficiency rating of 22.76, which, by the way, was second among centers. Assists, I don't even want to go with assists. Lopez needs to learn to pass the ball. But shot 51% field goal percentage. And honestly, we all know about how good he is free throw wise. Brook Lopez shot 81% from the free throw line, which I don't know lead centers, but it was pretty high. But here's how I'm justifying this. Okay, here's why he's ahead of Marc Gasol. Marc Gasol 17.4, 7.8. Lopez 17.2, 7.4. Is there really that much of a difference? 0.2 point less points, 0.2 less rebounds. Blocks, Lopez had 0.2 more blocks. You know, Lopez shot a better field goal percentage. You know what I mean? NetsBoy, come on though. Now you're just being silly. How you still can't have them better than Vucevic and Gasol. I mean, Vucevic 19 and 10, Gasol 17 and 7. Come on. I can understand you trying to make a case, but you really think Lopez is better? Yes. And here's the big reason why. Lopez played 29 minutes a game last season, averaged 29 minutes a game, which was the lowest amount of minutes per game out of all these centers that I'm talking about. Gasol averaged almost 34 minutes a game. Vucevic averaged almost 34 minutes a game. Al Jefferson was like 32 minutes a game. All these guys averaged more minutes than Lopez. If you took Brook Lopez's numbers and you made him play 34 minutes, which he did in the second half of the season when Lionel Hollins stopped being stupid and had him play every day and became the focal point of the offense, Lopez was actually averaging 22 points and 9 rebounds. 22 and 9 and 1.9 blocks per game during that span, where he was averaging about 34 points. So he was 22 and 9 with almost 2 blocks per game throughout that span. So that's when he played 34 minutes a game. He only averaged, these statistics are him playing 29 minutes a game. That's a full 5 minutes per game less. You've seen Brook Lopez play if you're a Nets fan. How many points and rebounds and blocks do you think Lopez is going to get in 5 minutes? He's at least going to score at least 4 more points in that span and get at least 1 or 2 more rebounds in 5 minutes more a game. I mean, it's as simple as that. That is why I have Lopez at number 2. The second half of the season, he probably played like the best center in the league. And I could have even tried to be a little irrational and make the case that he's the best center in the league based strictly off the second half of the season. I can't do that because this is supposed to be based off of the whole last season. But based off the fact that last year, he, second half of the season played phenomenally and he only played 29 minutes a game, to me, he was the second best center in the league last season. And I know you can try to make a case, but for Gasol and Vucevic to be up a little bit higher, even if you want to try to argue out Jefferson, to me, just when I talk about who I think was the best, second best center in the game last season, I'm going to say Brook Lopez every time because statistically, he's not quite there, but if you look at his minutes per game or his minutes per 34 or 30, he's there. He's there. And I mean, the blocks is 1.8 blocks per game is very high. It's the highest of everyone who I'm qualifying in my top, which, really kind of begs to ask the question, where do you make a case for people like Hassan Whiteside, and players like that, and Joakim Noah and Tyson Chandler, guys that Rudy Gobert, where can you make the case for those guys? DeAndre Jordan, he's not on this list. And I will say to you, without really arguing with you, that, you have a valid point. DeAndre Jordan, 11, 15, and 2.2, you know what? He could very easily be in a top 5. And I understand that. And I don't want anybody to think I'm leaving these people out or I'm being like one-sided, especially when I'm going off talking about how important blocks are. Hassan Whiteside, 11.8, 10, and 2.6 blocks per game. Player efficiency rating 26.26. I was really torn about how I was doing these top centers, but I was really thinking about it and the importance these players are to these teams. You remove, Al Jefferson, Brook Lopez, Marc Gasol, Nikola Vucevic from this team, the team is really gonna really get worse. Brook Lopez especially. You took Brook Lopez off the Nets last year, they're not making the playoffs. You take Marc Gasol off the Grizzlies, they're not making the playoffs. You take DeAndre Jordan off the Clippers, guess what? They're still making the playoffs. It might not be as good. So that's where I'm coming with this. I know you can put up an argument, and I'm getting a little sidetracked, and I would 100% say to you, you know what? You got a point. You can't dismiss how some of these centers are, but I'm just looking at it as a true valuable player. These are basically the best players on their respective teams. People like DeAndre Jordan and Hassan Whiteside and Rudy Gobert, they're not the best players on their teams. They might have great statistical numbers defensively and rebounding, but they are not the key pieces to their team. And these guys are key pieces, and that's really where I'm coming from with this. So, but feel free to post something the way you want it, and feel free to post, your own top 5. And like I said, I'm not going to argue with you if you have DeAndre Jordan there, or Rudy Gobert, or Hassan Whiteside, or even Robin Lopez. Like, you can make a case for a lot of players. Nerlens Noel, no, he wasn't that good. Andre Drummond, though, you could make a case for these guys. So, but getting off topic, Brook Lopez is number 2 because of the importance that he played for the Nets, and statistically over 29 minutes, he would have been higher. Rant. Number 1 center in the league is DeMarcus Cousins. 24.1 points per game, 12.7 rebounds, 1.7 blocks, player efficiency rating 25.29. The guy was 24-12 and 1.7. That's ridiculous. Field goal percentage is a little low, 46% for a center, but 3.6 assists is very good. The guy's 24-12. You can't argue with that. He's also the key player on that team. That's why Cousins is number 1. I think he's a little overrated. The guy averaged 4.3 turnovers, which to me is ridiculous as a center. 4.3 turnovers, so you could really even make a case that he could be even lower, not number 1. But I just look at anyone who's 24-12, to me, has to be one of the top players in their positions, regardless of if their team is not good, regardless of what. But like I said, that's why I got, you can make a case for a lot of people. That's why, though, I got DeMarcus Cousins at number 1, because the guy was 24-12, 1.7 blocks per game, 25.29 player efficiency rating. The guy was great. So there you have it. Greg Monroe as my honorable mention. Number 5, Al Jefferson. Number 4, Nikola Vucevic. Number 3, Marc Gasol. Number 2, Brook Lopez. Number 1, DeMarcus Cousins. You can, like I said, forget me saying like I said. Just tell me what you think, guys. I'm sure a lot of you are going to make a case for a lot of other people. I left off this, and like I said, I'm not going to argue with you, but this is my countdown based off of importance that these players played on their team last season. Done. NetsBoy done with that crap. So there you have it. That is my top 5 centers, which does not completely conclude my NetsBoy marathon of top players in respective positions. Next week will be my top 3 most underrated players. I did that a couple years ago back, and I'm going to do it again. So those are going to be players who really go under the radar that people don't realize have huge importance to their team. So there you have it. Keep your eyes open for your latest NetsBoy episode, probably be in a week or so. And that'll be the top 3 most underrated players. And let me know what you think. Comment down. Tell me if you think I'm stupid, but be polite about it. Actually, I don't really care. Tell me who your top 5 is. So until next time, this is NetsBoy, signing off.